The sun comes up over the Giza Plateau, stretching out the long shadows between three colossal structures that have left us amazed for more than 4,000 years. The Great Pyramid of Khufu looms before us. Its 2.3 million blocks of stone weighing an average of 2.5 tons each, fitted together with a precision that still puzzles today's engineers to understand. For centuries, we've heard the stories of ramps, ropes, and sheer human muscle. But what if all we thought we knew about how the pyramids were built was a myth? Suppose the ruins of an engineering marvel so sophisticated that it would redefine all we know about ancient Egypt lay hidden under the sands of the desert. Today, we will be revealing the true history of how pyramids were constructed with the support of groundbreaking archaeological finds that are redefining history itself. First, this enigma begins 4,500 years ago during Egypt's Old Kingdom era of the 4th dynasty, when Pharaoh Khufu took the throne around 2589 BCE. Egypt was flourishing. The Nile's yearly floodwaters delivered riches, trade routes spanned the known world, and the pharaoh was believed to be a living deity whose final resting place demanded nothing less than architectural greatness. The earth near Memphis hummed with activity as Khufu made his plans to construct the world's largest pyramid. But this was no egomaniacal monument of one. It was the culmination of thousands of years of architectural ingenuity, from the first of mastaba tombs to Djoser's groundbreaking step pyramid, the product of the great architect Imhotep. The one question that troubled ancient historians such as Herodotus, and still troubles us today, was uncomplicated but profound. How did a society without wheels, pulleys, or iron tools build what would be the world's tallest structure for more than 3,800 years? Pyramid construction, as Egyptologists over the ages had so long assumed, had appeared nearly savage in its savagery. Tens of thousands of slaves hauling massive blocks of stone up titanic piles of dirt ramps into the scorching desert sun. This Hollywood and early 20th century archaeologist-fostered myth assumed that raw human agony and boundless manpower were the main construction tools. The traditional historian Herodotus described 100,000 men working for 20 years, and this was accepted as holy scripture even though it is contradicted by no archaeological evidence. But then, with the advent of modern archaeology starting to excavate underneath, weaknesses in this conventional theory began to emerge. Where were the enormous ramp systems that would have taken millions of tons of material to build? Why was no trace to be found of the colossal slave barracks required to accommodate a huge workforce? Most curious of all, how did rough tools and brute strength manage to meet the mathematical accuracy we see in the construction of the pyramid? Its square base accurate within an error of only 2.3 centimeters, its alignment with true north within 3.4 arc minutes? The first hints of a new story began to appear in the 1980s when archaeologist Mark Lehner unearthed something extraordinary in the shadow of the Great Pyramid, a vast complex of workers' towns, with bakeries, breweries, and hospitals. They were not the crude slave hovels of popular myth, but tidy communities with skilled artisans, engineers, and occasional laborers, who were well-dressed and well-fed. Lehner's researchers found a trace of a high-level logistics system, thousands of bones of cattle indicating that workers ate 4,000 pounds of meat per day, along with quantities of industrially produced bread and beer. But the real breakthrough came when French architect Jean-Pierre Houdin presented his game-changing internal ramp theory in 2007. Using 3D modeling and architectural analysis, Houdin suggested that the pyramid was not built with any external ramps at all, but with an ingenious internal spiral ramp system that wound its way up through the center of the pyramid. The theory told the world why huge blocks were being moved to huge heights with no external evidence. But it needed evidence that internal constructions of this sort did exist. Houdin's theory was put to the test by technologies unimaginable to the Egyptians. In 2017, scan pyramids used cosmic ray meography, the same method applied to explore volcanoes, to produce the first full internal scan of the Great Pyramid. The outcome was astonishing. Scans showed a huge empty space, more than 100 feet long, concealed above the Grand Gallery, precisely where Houdin's theory of an internal ramp had forecast it to be. Further thermal scanning generated temperature fluctuations indicating additional concealed chambers and corridors, and ground-penetrating radar generated indications of an intricate system of interior building. But most strikingly, internal architectural study revealed unequivocal proof of modular construction methods. Every element of the pyramid was constructed as a standalone module, having its internal system of transport. This was not an error in trial at random. It was systemic engineering on a scale that indicated the ancient Egyptians possessed some familiarity with structural mechanics, one we are only just starting to understand. Standing behind this architectural masterpiece was one whose name has been lost to history, Khufu's master architect. We don't know his name, but from the monument he bequeathed to us, we may infer his genius. This anonymous engineer grasped principles of physics and mathematics that would not be methodically documented for millennia. He created a system of structures that would transfer the gargantuan 6.2 million tons of stone load through a series of internal rooms and tunnels, building what is an enormous three-dimensional puzzle where each block supports and is supported by its neighbors. The engineer's math needed to account for thermal expansion, earthquake movements, and the slow settling of the buildings over centuries. Most impressively, he created the system of internal ramps to be self-destabilizing. While construction was being transported aloft, lower sections of the ramp were being filled in, leaving no evidence that they ever existed. That is why no ramps are ever found on the outside of buildings at Giza. They were concealed within the building itself, such a masterpiece that current engineers refer to it as a logistical masterstroke. New archaeological finds have rewritten our understanding of who built the pyramids. From being slave mobs, the Great Pyramid was built by a highly disciplined, professional labor force that ranged anywhere up to 20,000 at its peak. Papyrus records unearthed at the Red Sea coastal city of Wadi al-Jarf in 2013 offer the first modern written records of pyramid construction, detailing the advanced supply chains that brought limestone from Tura, granite from Aswan, and Lebanese cedar wood. The workers were divided into crews that were known as Friends of Khufu and Drunkards of Menkaure, which implies pride and competitiveness on the part of the builders. Skeletal remains indicate these laborers were healthy and had been visited by physicians, evidence of mended breaks, and even past surgery. They worked in shifts, with many of the laborers brought in only when the Nile was in flood and it was impossible to work in the fields. This was not slavery. This was quite possibly the first great public works project in all of history, and citizens drafted for a colossus of an enterprise that brought the kingdom together for a shared cause. The tools and methods used by these old engineers were far more sophisticated than had been fantasized. While they had no iron, steel, or modern machinery, they possessed at least as vital an asset, a profound respect for stone, physics, and megascale building design. Copper tools, with sophisticated metallurgy, could cut limestone fairly easily. For rocks as hard as granite, they employed a copper tube and sand abrasion method that was capable of drilling perfectly round holes in dense rock. Their accuracy indicates that they employed measurement instruments we have yet to identify. Some experts believe that they had forms of the plumb bob, water level, and even early optical tools for astronomical alignment. Most importantly, tool mark analysis on pyramid stones reveals traces of techniques requiring not only proficiency, but standardization by thousands of laborers. This implies a technical instruction and quality control that takes into account a civilization capable of instilling sophisticated educational and organizational systems able to inculcate complex skills into laborers spread throughout the realm. These pyramid-building discoveries are forcing us to fundamentally question ancient Egyptian civilization. We're not seeing a Stone Age civilization stumbling upon monumental architecture by brute force, but a very sophisticated culture that had advanced engineering methods, complex organizational systems, and creative problem-solving skills. The internal ramp system alone is a degree of three-dimensional thinking and logistical planning that will have no place in a contemporary building project. The accuracy of the pyramid's construction. Its approximately perfect alignment, its mathematical proportioning, its structural integrity after 4,500 years, indicates that ancient Egyptian engineers possessed ideas of physics, mathematics, and engineering that we're only now relearning. It isn't a question of how the stones were transported, but of recognizing that our ancestors possessed intellectual capacity and technical expertise that we've always underestimated. The pyramids were not the possession of aliens or lost societies. They were the product of human minds and capabilities that we're only now understanding in all their fullness. Standing here before us today in front of the Great Pyramid, we are no longer gazing at some enigmatic problem, but at an example of human creativity that still has secrets to tell. The combination of archaeological excavation, high-tech imaging, and diligent study of ancient texts is revealing a story of pyramid building much more exciting than any theory of extraterrestrial engineering or vanished supercivilizations. These monuments were created by expert human hands under the direction of visionary human brains using advanced techniques that demonstrate the limitless potential of ancient Egyptian civilization. But our quest for information is not complete. With each new technology, each new expedition of archaeologists, each scrutiny of what we already know, we are drawing closer to more than how the pyramids were constructed, closer to knowing what the pyramids themselves reveal about the society behind the pyramids. If you've enjoyed this glimpse into ancient engineering, I urge you to learn more about archaeology and ancient history. Subscribe for the latest developments that continue to transform our knowledge of the past, and tell me in comments. What's the most fascinating thing about building pyramids? The history of human greatness inscribed in stone continues to develop, and each one of us has a part to play in revealing the extraordinary tale of our common human heritage.